Hi, my name is India Gray, and the book that I read was This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein, Capitalism versus the Climate. The book was published on September 16th of 2014, and I'll just show you guys kind of what the book looks like. I read it on my iPad, so sorry. So in the book, Naomi Klein discusses some of her epiphanies surrounding climate change and the role that capitalism has played in the state of our current climate. Along with that, Klein discusses the ways in which climate change will be difficult to fix in the eyes of capitalists. It is also stressed that because capitalism has been our downfall, it will be hard to combat that without the use of more capitalism being involved. But also, the fact that climate change will be hard to combat with how capitalism can't combat climate change, as it was the start of it, and if it would be even feasible. So in total, for summary, there is a total of 13 chapters in this book. These 13 chapters are broken up into 3 sections that all act as building blocks as Naomi Klein explains the importance of reducing greenhouse emissions and how reducing these emissions will strengthen the economy, communities, and ultimately reverse the damage that has been done in both of those areas. As you delve a little bit deeper into the chapters, part 1 is titled Bad Timing, and part 1 discusses the free market as well as extractivism, which are 2 major themes in the book. Part 2 is titled Magical Thinking, which goes into why big corporations that contribute to these greenhouse emissions cannot help, and the theory of low-hanging fruit that goes along with that. Part 3 is titled Starting Anyway, which contains the last 4 chapters of Klein's book, and it discusses the move from tragedy of the commons and acting in selfishness to improving our relationship with the earth. So one of the things that Klein lets readers know from the beginning is the issue with climate deniers. Climate deniers being those who are purposefully ignoring climate-related issues because acknowledging these issues revolving the climate means that the benefits that these climate deniers receive will come to a halt. Obviously, these benefits, of course, being economic. No one's going to want to acknowledge issues that stop their cash flow, and she makes that very apparent, and even relates some of this capitalism and these climate deniers, which goes hand in hand with capitalism. She links that directly to imperialism and just colonialism. So she also lets readers know that this is something that has been going on in our history and that it'll be hard to stop it. So again, these climate deniers are people that believe we can easily adapt to a future climate that we were never supposed to have to consider adapting to in the first place. This concept is a starting point in the book, and it's described in chapter 1 as well as in the introduction, and was the main objective. I'm so sorry, I'm coughing so much. The free market, for one, is another objective of this novel, and for someone who is familiar with the term, you would know that it is by definition an economic system in which prices are determined by unrestricted competition between privately owned businesses. Along with this, another characteristic of the free market is that there is little to no government control, which is an issue. If no one's regulating anything, these companies may know the damage that they're doing and the emissions that they're producing, but if there is no consequence, no regulation put in place, they're not going to stop, essentially, because where government is not involved, especially with an issue as large scale as this, there's no organization to really put things into place. It's also talked about that a lot of those who are higher in power and benefit from capitalism that hurts the climate are quick to suggest smaller changes to lifestyle as a quick solution to overconsumption. Which obviously brings into the idea of what Klein calls low-hanging fruit, the theory of low-hanging fruit, which is a quick fix to a larger scale solution, kind of something to get people to shut up, essentially. And she mentions that there is a lot of that is happening as far as like in the free market, and as they're being called out on what the harm that they're doing to our environment. Interestingly enough, these large environmentalist groups are often in cahoots with larger corporations that produce large amounts of pollution. Klein really lets readers know that words mean nothing with no action behind them, which is another reason why government interference and harsher policies on big polluters would be so beneficial to restoring the earth and halting current damage. Another thing that she was mentioned is that these market-based solutions rarely ever include totally moving away from fossil fuels, but instead these smaller suggestions. And I just want to say that this book really opened up my understanding on climate change in the ways that so much of the same information is pushed out to us, just maybe in a different form or in a different, a different way. As far as getting information and not being on the political side of the issue, we are, like I said, always told to do smaller things. Always presented with quick fixes that are not going to solve an issue this complex. And then the last section of Klein's novel discusses how non-extractivist thinking helps us move towards renewing our earth. Klein says that living non-extractively means relying overwhelmingly on resources that can be continuously regenerated. And I found this interesting. However, I just wish that there was more alternatives mentioned as far as extracting from the earth was concerned. I feel that that would have been something good for readers and skeptics to hear. As far as different systems that are being put in place that require minimal inputs or minimal external inputs, and it produce almost no waste, because that is something that she mentions about living non-extractively. So as far as arguers to her book or those opposed to her book, like she mentions obviously a lot of dangers as far as extractivism and having this extractivist attitude. But when we got to kind of the conclusion of the book, I just wish there was more detail on how these systems could be put in place or used or what they entail, just because there's so much stress put on obviously the problem with extracting. So I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit. But aside from that, I feel like the book was very well written as far as breaking down components and how each factor relates back to capitalism and relates back to the climate. I just wish that there was a little bit more there for the naysayers. So